the first thing you notice is the silence. It's not a peaceful quiet. It's a heavy, hollow silence that presses down on you, the kind that tells you something is fundamentally, irrevocably wrong. I woke up an hour ago, my hand instinctively reaching across the sheets for Andrew, a sleepy habit I've had for years. My fingers found only cold, empty space. For a second, my brain tried to supply a reason. He got up early for a run. He had that early meeting. But then my eyes opened to the dim morning light, and the wrongness of it all started to seep in. The air still smells faintly of him, that stupidly expensive cologne I got him for his birthday. But it's a ghost of a scent, already fading into the smell of stale air and my own rising panic. I forced myself out of bed and walked into the living room. His keys weren't in the bowl by the door. His favorite coffee mug, the chipped ceramic one he refused to throw out, wasn't on the counter. It was washed, dried, and placed back in the cupboard, an act of finality that felt like a punch to the gut. I think I've been sitting on the edge of the bed ever since, just staring at the closet door I finally got the courage to open. His side is empty. Gone. All his shirts, his worn-out jeans, the one suit he owned for weddings. Even the ugly gray hoodie I always stole from him on cold nights is gone. All that's left are two wire hangers, dangling like twisted metal skeletons. They look like question marks, which feels like a sick joke the universe is playing on me. My phone is face down on the nightstand. I don't want to look at it, but I can't stop myself. My hand trembles as I turn it over. The screen lights up with a graveyard of my own making. A wall of unanswered blue bubbles. Dozens of them, sent between 3 a.m. and now, each one more frantic and pathetic than the last. They started with "Andrew, where are you?" and devolved into desperate, rambling paragraphs of apology that I can't even bear to read now. A string of missed calls that went straight to voicemail. I actually whispered his name into the apartment a minute ago. "Andrew, this isn't funny." But the silence just swallowed the words. It didn't feel like an absence of sound. It felt like an answer. The crazy thing is, last night was perfect, not just good date night perfect. I mean, one of those rare, cinematic nights that feel scripted. We decided to cook pasta from scratch, a ridiculously ambitious project for a Tuesday. We ended up getting flour all over the kitchen, on our clothes, in our hair. I remember Andrew dabbing a spot of it off my nose with his thumb, his eyes crinkling at the corners in that way that makes my stomach do a little flip. We drank a cheap bottle of red wine, danced to old soul music in the living room, and eventually collapsed on the couch to watch some dumb action movie. I fell asleep on his chest halfway through, the rumbling sound of his laughter vibrating through me. He carried me to bed. I remember the feeling of his arms around me, the solid, steady beat of his heart against my ear. It was the safest I'd felt in months. But then he fell asleep. And in the darkness, with only the sound of his soft, even breathing, the old poison started to seep in. The warmth of his body beside me, which moments before had been a comfort, suddenly felt like a trap. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was an echo chamber for my own ugly thoughts. My ex, the one before Andrew, didn't just cheat. He meticulously curated a parallel existence. I found out because of a misplaced receipt for a hotel room 2 towns over, a room he was in while I was at home nursing the flu he swore he was too sick to visit me with. That kind of betrayal doesn't just leave a scar, it rewires your brain. Andrew is steady. He's kind and transparent and everything my ex wasn't. But my broken brain can't accept that at face value. It's always looking for the cracks, for the other shoe to drop. And last night, lying there in the quiet, a thought started to form. It was small at first, a little worm of an idea. You don't really know his friends. Not really. What do they say about you when you're not there? If things went south, would they have his back or ours? And that's when the experiment was born. It wasn't an emotional, impulsive act in my mind. No, it was a hypothesis, a logical inquiry. I framed it in pseudoscientific terms in my head. If the primary subject, Andrew, expresses doubt, will the support network, his friends, act to reinforce the relationship bond or accelerate its dissolution? It sounds insane now, writing it down. But at 2 a.m., fueled by cheap wine and deep-seated terror, it felt like the most rational thing in the world. It was a fire drill. You pull the alarm to make sure everyone knows how to get out safely. You don't do it expecting the building to actually burn down. I told myself it was a harmless way to gather information, a simulation of a crisis to see how our support system would function. It was a brilliant, self-contained, completely controlled experiment. And I, the brilliant, detached scientist, was going to get my answer. It was just a little peek behind the curtain. What could possibly go wrong? His phone was on his nightstand, charging. The screen was dark. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silent room. This was the point where any normal person would have stopped. A voice, a tiny, sane voice in the back of my head screamed at me, "Phoebe, don't, just go to sleep." But the urge, the toxic need to know, was so much louder. I reached over him, my body moving with a stealth I didn't know I possessed. My fingers brushed against the cool glass of the screen. I lifted it. The lock screen lit up with a picture of us from our trip to the coast, me on his back, both of us grinning like idiots. It was a punch of guilt, a quick, sharp jab. I ignored it. Password, I held my breath. My first guess was his birthday. I typed in the 4 digits, my thumbs slick with sweat. 0-8-1-4. The phone unlocked instantly. A wave of something sick and triumphant washed over me. It should have been a sign of his trust, his complete openness with me. He used his own birthday. He had nothing to hide. But in my twisted logic, it just became another data point. Access to the experiment was successful. I navigated to his messages, my eyes scanning for the group chat. There it was. The boys. A stupid, simple name for the 3 guys who had been his best friends since kindergarten. I'd met them all. They were nice. They always told me how happy Andrew was, how good I was for him. Liars or just polite? I was about to find out. I opened the chat. The last messages were from earlier that day, stupid memes, jokes about football, normal guy stuff. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I felt a tremor in my hand, a physical manifestation of the line I was about to cross. I took a deep breath and channeled what I thought was Andrew's voice, his cadence. I made it casual, I made it sound real. "Guys, crazy thought," I typed. Then I paused, letting the fake vulnerability hang in the digital air. I added the final, lethal sentence. "I think I might not be in love with Phoebe anymore." I stared at the words. They looked alien on the screen, a profane little string of characters. Part of me wanted to delete it, to throw the phone across the room and pretend this whole insane idea never happened. But the scientist in me, the self-destructive saboteur, won. My thumb pressed send. The little blue bubble popped into existence on the right side of the screen, a testament to my betrayal. I watched it for a moment, then quietly placed the phone back on the nightstand, screen down. I slid back under the covers, my body buzzing with a toxic cocktail of adrenaline and shame. I felt like I had just planted a bomb and was now lying next to the ticking clock, waiting with a sick sense of excitement for the explosion. I must have fallen into a shallow, restless sleep, because the next thing I knew, a persistent buzzing was cutting through the morning quiet. It wasn't my phone. It was Andrew's. It vibrated on the nightstand, a frantic, insistent rattle. I kept my eyes shut, feigning sleep, my heart starting to pound in my chest. Showtime. Andrew groaned, rolling over to silence it. I heard him unlock the phone, the familiar little click. Then, silence. Not the peaceful silence of sleep, but a dead, heavy quiet that felt charged with electricity. I could feel his body go completely still beside me. I risked cracking one eye open. He was sitting up, staring at the screen. The dim light from the phone illuminated his face, and the expression on it was one I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was a slow, dawning horror, a look of utter disbelief. He scrolled, his thumb moving mechanically. I could see the muscles in his jaw clenching and unclenching. He was reading the replies, the frantic calls from his friends, the panicked, confused texts. "Dude, what the hell, call me now? Is this a joke? Don't mess around like that. Andrew talked to us, what happened?" He finally lowered the phone, his movements slow and deliberate, like an old man. He turned his head and looked at me. I quickly shut my eyes, but it was too late. He knew I was awake. "Phoebe," he said. His voice was unnervingly calm, hoarse but calm. "Did you touch my phone last night?" This was my chance to lie, to deny everything. But looking at his face, at the profound hurt that was already settling in his eyes, the words wouldn't come. My throat felt tight and dry. I sat up, pulling the comforter around me like a shield. "Andrew, I can explain. Just answer the question. Did you send a message to my friends?" "It was a joke," I blurted out, the words tumbling out in a pathetic rush. A stupid joke. A social experiment. I just wanted to see what they would say, that's all. I was going to tell you this morning, we were going to laugh about it. My voice trailed off as he held up the phone, turning the screen towards me. He didn't have to, I knew what was on it. A joke, he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. You thought this was a joke? My best friend Sam is on a plane right now. He was supposed to be flying to Chicago for a job interview. But he canceled it and booked the first flight back here because he thought I was having a complete breakdown. My other friend, David, sat up all night with his wife, worried sick, trying to figure out how to help me. You turned their genuine love and concern for me into what? A game. He shook his head, a look of profound disappointment washing over his features. It was so much worse than anger. Anger I could fight. Anger I could handle. But this quiet, soul-crushing disappointment was a verdict. This isn't about them, not really, he continued, his voice barely a whisper. This is about you. You took my trust, the trust I gave you completely, and you used it as a weapon. You used it to humiliate me in front of the people I care about most in this world. That's not a joke, Phoebe. That's cruel. He didn't give me a chance to argue. There was no screaming match, no throwing things, no dramatic breakdown. It was worse. It was a quiet, methodical dismantling of our life together. As I sat there, tangled in the bedsheets, trying to formulate another useless apology, he just stood up and walked to the closet. The sound of hangers scraping along the metal rod was the only noise in the room. It was a brutal, rhythmic sound. Scrape, zip, scrape, zip. He pulled out a suitcase from the top shelf and started taking his clothes off the hangers, folding them with a calm, detached precision. Andrew, please, I begged, my voice cracking. I finally scrambled out of bed, grabbing a robe. Please just stop and talk to me. We can fix this. I know it was stupid. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done, but please don't do this. He didn't look at me, he just kept folding. A pair of jeans, a stack of t-shirts. He moved like an automaton, his face a blank mask of resolve. Every item he placed in the suitcase was another brick in the wall he was building between us. It was like watching a surgeon amputate a limb, no emotion, just a necessary, irreversible procedure. I'm sorry, I sobbed, the words feeling hollow and inadequate. I'm so sorry. He finally paused, a blue sweater in his hands, the one I loved on him. He looked at it for a moment, then looked at me. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something behind the emptiness in his eyes. It was a deep, bottomless well of hurt. I once thought our future would be something beautiful, he said, his voice flat. I was even, never mind, it doesn't matter now. He tossed the sweater into the suitcase and zipped it shut. He walked into the bathroom and came back with his DOP kit. Then the living room for his laptop. He moved through our apartment, the home we had built together, like a ghost collecting his earthly possessions before moving on. I just followed him, a helpless, weeping satellite, my pleas and apologies bouncing off his wall of silence. Finally, he was at the door, suitcase in one hand, keys in the other. He turned to face me one last time. Goodbye, Phoebe, he said. The door clicked shut behind him. It wasn't a slam. It was a soft, final sound like a sigh. And in the deafening silence that followed, my world, the one I had so carefully and stupidly set on fire, finally collapsed into ash. That was 3 weeks ago. It feels like a lifetime. The first few days are a blur of frantic texts he never read and calls that went to a disconnected number. I learned he'd changed it from Sam's girlfriend, who texted me once. A short, cold message. Leave him alone, he's been through enough. I tried reaching out to our mutual friends, hoping someone would act as a bridge. But the response was a uniform, awkward chill. Conversations became stilted. Plans were vaguely canceled. It wasn't an organized shunning, it was something more painful. It was the quiet, collective distancing of people who didn't want to be near the blast radius of my toxicity. My best friend, Olivia, was the only one who was brutally honest. We met for coffee, and she listened to my whole tear-soaked, self-pitying story. When I was done, she didn't offer a comforting hug. She just sighed and looked at me with a tired sadness. "What did you expect, Phobes?" she said, stirring her latte. "You didn't just break his trust. You held it up for public ridicule. You took his deepest emotional support system and turned them into unwitting actors in your twisted little play. This isn't about your ex anymore. This is about you. You hurt him in a way that was uniquely cruel. The final, crushing blow came last week. I was cleaning out the storage closet, a desperate attempt to feel productive, to do something other than stare at the walls. Tucked away in a box of old travel guides, I found a thin file folder with Andrew's neat handwriting on the tab. EU Spring. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a meticulously planned itinerary for a 3-week trip through Italy and Greece. There were printouts of train schedules, notes on little restaurants he'd found online, links to boutique hotels. It was the trip we had always dreamed of taking. And tucked into a side pocket was a small, velvet blue box. I knew what it was before I even opened it. Inside, nestled in white satin, was a simple, elegant engagement ring. Taped to the inside of the folder was the receipt. The purchase date was 1 week before my experiment. I think I screamed. Or maybe I just made a sound, a choked, animal noise of pure agony. The reality of what I had thrown away, what I had willfully destroyed, crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't just my boyfriend. He was my future, and I had incinerated it for a moment of insane, self-sabotaging paranoia. Now, my life has shrunk to the 4 walls of this apartment and the glowing screen of my phone. I'm a ghost haunting the digital lives of people I used to know. I don't look at Andrew's profile. He blocked me everywhere anyway. But his friends haven't, so I scroll. I watch their lives continue, a veer to the world I was kicked out of. Last night, Sam posted a photo. It was a backyard barbecue. Andrew was in the background, flipping burgers. He looked thinner, tired, but he was smiling. A real, genuine smile as he laughed at something one of his friends said. That smile didn't feel like hope. It felt like a locked door. It was the visual confirmation that his world was slowly, painfully, but surely healing. And I was on the outside, looking in, trapped in the endless, bottomless hell I had built for myself.